Okay, so Logan, you're the guest here. We brought you on to sort of hear your opinions. Let's just get into it. Who should stay, who should go, and then we can sort of start about like who we would look at for the specific positions in the offseason.
Oh, let's see. I have my notepad. Hold on.
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah.
I definitely said for DPS you release Zik, Mangachu. I think it's 100% at this point that Surefour is gonna retire.
Yeah, I
Like
think
it's 100%. Tanks, release all the tanks, and maybe you can find trades for some of them to get some money back, like Beast, maybe. I feel like, and then
yeah, I don't know what the market would be like for Beast. That's interesting. Sorry, continue.
yeah, and like the supports, maybe Roki, maybe, but you can find someone else and release
Roki
both of
because he has a fan base.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's something you might not know
yeah.
because you're not from Toronto, but like Roki is arguably the most popular player on this team. I'm not even kidding. Like Surefour has all the people who he's brought from the outside, but like if you go to the Toronto Defiant Discord, they're just spamming Roki emojis. Like consider gifts. Like it's weird. Like why he has such a massive fan base. Because I'm on the same side as you. Like I don't know. Like I don't think he's a top tier main support. I'd rather see somebody who can come in and play.
Yeah, he's a pretty good sub when he came in
Fans
that
love
one
him.
Gibraltar map. I feel like whenever Crew's power went out.
Yeah, he had his moments. They brought him in for Baptiste because I think it became pretty clear that Creve couldn't play Baptiste at the highest level.
Yeah.
So they definitely needed like more of like an extra flex support. But okay, just to clarify, you're saying scrap the main tank, scrap the off tank. So like, Numlocked, Beast, Nevix are all gone. If you can trade them, get money, great. Otherwise, they're gone. For Hitscan, you're saying keep Logics.
Yeah, keep Logics for sure.
And then let go of Mangachu, Orkim as a coach, Zik, and then Surefour's probably going to retire. Okay, for the most part, I think I agree. What about agilities? Sorry, I forgot what you said about agilities.
Definitely keep him as a sub. As a sub, for sure.
Okay. And then the supports basically keep Kareev and nothing else?
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
Okay. I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you, especially in returns to like the tank line. I think the tank line was like pretty disappointing this year. I know a lot of people thought it was going to be. I was actually of the optimistic nature where I thought like Beast had a lot of upside potential. I thought Nevix was going to come in there with that like championship mentality and really like I think bring him along. And I think that both of them were pretty individually talented. I think it was just like a pretty poor fit. Whereas Beast isn't a very vocal, confident, like leading main tank. And Nevix is definitely a cerebral, quiet off tank. And I think what you would have wanted was either like a shot calling aggressive main tank, like Fusions, for instance, and then pair Nevix alongside him. I think that's why you saw so much success when he would play with Super in season 2 or whatever, like in scrims or whatever, because Super could like, really, very much like lead him and he could just really play around it. Because again, like that final game of the season, I thought Nevix like played really well. Like Nevix had his moments where he was playing really well. And I think Beast did too. He just probably would have worked better if it was a more veteran team with more vocal shot callers amongst the group where a lot of the pressure wouldn't have had to fall on him. Because I think as a rookie, he just like couldn't handle that.
He just needs to Beast in general, he just needs to develop more. He's a young kid. He's like 18, 19 years old. I'd say give him a couple of years, maybe playing in contenders a little more, develop. I think he may be right for the picking. Then one thing I don't understand about the players is, how do you not? You try all these people. How do you not have an in-game leader? Like, how did it take us half a year to find that?
Yeah, I think that was the other issue. We did like our dream roster, right? And like I don't know who's a shot caller and who's not, and that very clearly was an issue with this team. So they said they've revamped their interview process. They have a whole like sports psychologist thing that you have to like fill out to sort of develop things. So I think that they're going to learn from that going forward. Now moving to the hit scans and the DPS in general. I agree about potentially keeping Logics and Agilities. I totally agree. Like we just mentioned it. Agilities, you know what he is. He can play Genji, he can play Doomfist. And other than that, you definitely need another flex DPS player to round them out. Logics is an interesting one. I definitely am of the position where I think you could keep him or let him go. And I wouldn't necessarily be angry either way. I think we've seen Logics' ceiling where he can be pretty good. He's been a little bit inconsistent this year. I would definitely want another hit scan with I think a little bit higher upside, and we can get into who we think that would be a little bit later. But I do agree that as like a secondary option / I would like to see Logic still on the team. Zik's an interesting one because I feel really bad about Zik. I think Zik got the short end of the stick this year because he got brought in under really shitty circumstances, and I don't think he was on ping the entire time. He never really got to show what he was capable of. So I don't know if I probably do end up cutting him, but at the very least, I think he deserves a better look. Like, I think he deserves, like, a proper tryout where you can actually, like, you know what I mean, show what he has. Because I do think there's upside there. And then in the supports, we're totally in agreement. You said it was one of Cruz's best seasons. Yeah, I think his Mercy was really good, but I think there's just better potential options out there. I think Cruz's big thing that he really brought to the table was his leadership and his shot calling. And ideally, you can sort of like even that out more throughout. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, Chris, your final thoughts and just sort of the rest of the roster.
Yeah, I agree. One thing, I guess this will actually help us lead into a little discussion about who we should bring on. But like, if we're going out and looking for people to bring on, do you think we should go down the more generalist or specialist route? Like, do we get a couple more agilities who are like really good on specific heroes, or do we get more surefours, which are like a lot better on, just a large swath of heroes?
I definitely think you find someone kind of like the K who plays mainly hits game but can flex to some projectiles. I feel like
Yeah.
kind of like agility, I guess you could say. Like the K can play Genji. He can play, I think, Junkrat, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He can play some projectiles, but mainly as a hit scan. I always feel like that's the best person or player to find, and I feel like that's what they should try and get.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. I think obviously you don't know if hero pools are going to be a thing, but I think regardless, if Blizzard consistently, keeps to their word and starts patching this game, more consistently over the time, like metas are going to change, and you want somebody who can like flex in and out of different roles. So yeah, I think a projectile would be definitely a good hero to have. I'm okay with just having someone who can play hit scan, but I think the more flexible, the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I like the generalist idea as well.
Okay, so let's jump into this. Let's go. Let's start off with the main tank here, Logan. Main tank is one of the toughest roles I think to play in the Overwatch League. Clearly, we struggled this year. We had Beast, and then we had Numlock, and I don't think either of them really hit that sweet spot of I think what we were looking for moving forward. So if you're the GM of the Toronto Defiant right now, and I give you a contract, and I don't give you an empty check because let's try to be a little bit realistic here, even though some of my answers are a little bit ambitious. But like, who are you really going after? You know what I mean? Who do you think hits that sweet spot that the Toronto Defiant should be keeping their eye on?
Well, what I wrote down in my video, and I still agree with right now, is probably Pacbo, because yes, he got playtime at the end of the day at Atlanta Reign, but he was benched the entire season. And he's still a great player. We even saw it when he did play at the end of the day. And you bring that player in, and he's still good, and he talks a lot in game. And he's very flexible on all the main tanks.
Yeah,
I think he'd be a good fit.
Pokeball is one of those interesting ones because is his English good? Like I wasn't sure how that worked. Where he was sort of from. I don't know too much about Pokeball. I know he played in season 2 and played a little bit this year, mostly for the monkey. Pokeball's an interesting one. Although I kind of saw him going to like I feel like he could work with like the Justice. I think there's a couple different teams there that would probably look for somebody like Pokeball. But I do think it's an interesting fit. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I think it's the necessary fit. I think it's one of our best shots, to be honest, because this is a guy that's really good, and he's one of the only really good people that is legit on a bench because there's too many good people on a team.
Yeah,
he's going to be itching. He knows he's good. He's going to be itching to go to another team.
Yeah,
and I think that makes Toronto's if Toronto can, buy him for the right amount of money, I think, that's our best chance of getting somebody good that isn't also risky.
Yeah, for sure.
If we're going to try and get somebody good, we may try and go for a contenders player, but that once again is very risky. Could work, could not. So I like Pokemon.
Anybody else you guys are sort of thinking?
All I wrote down was Pacbo, but I know there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
In contenders and league.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
I thought an interesting one that a lot of people have brought up. I'm not the first person to think of this, but Lolish would be an interesting one, given sort of how he's been shafted with visa issues the last couple of years. I don't know if he would come into the league and immediately make an impact. Obviously, I believe the Washington Justice head coach came out and was sort of like the plan was to start him on Orisa and Reinhardt, and that they would let Roar just play the monkey. That was their initial plan. That's why they had Lolish and Elivat. So I think that'd be interesting. Obviously, in my dream scenario, you go over to the shock, and you can get Junk Buck,
Stop.
and you bring Super and Moth alongside him. I gotta say it because part of me just believes, man. I think if I speak this enough, eventually I'm gonna speak it into existence, and it's gonna happen. That's sort of my dream scenario. But more realistically, I do think Lolish, and I think who was the one from British Hurricane? Is it Haiti or something like that?
Yeah,
Hadi would be interesting, just because obviously the success that they've seen throughout the year. But the real one. And I know that this doesn't necessarily fit because we are like an English-speaking organization. We made that very clear. But man, wouldn't it be interesting to see Yakpung come back and play for the Toronto Defiant after all the success he's been able to have in Korean contenders? As a Defiant fan, I'd love to see it, even though I think there's no chance in hell. But that's
the long-term play. Maybe they've just been having English tincture over there for the past year, kind of just building his English skills so he can get there. Hey, if I was going to pick up anybody else, and I just like to think really realistically right now, I'd love to see OGE. OGE has he has experience on mixed rosters, so he could probably pull that off. He's been with LA Gladiators for a long time, and I think after this kind of disappointing season, there may be a chance that they actually have an appetite to trade him or sell him off. Being that his contract isn't up, which I have no idea. And I really like his kind of aggressive play style. I really like his Reinhardt and his Monkey. So
yeah, I mean he went from the fuel, right? I was gonna say Logan can probably add some insight because he was on the fuel in season 2 and actually just went to LAG this year. I know he was another player we were sort of linked to in the offseason. I think you may be right. I think OG might actually be available because if you're the Gladiators, like, why are you paying him so much money when your team, is getting beat by like the Valiant, for instance? We almost beat them with Numlock as our main tank. So that's another interesting sort of main tank.
I think OG would be a good fit as well, but it depends on how the contracts,
Yeah, for sure. High risk, high reward. Okay, let's get to the off tank position here because I think Nevix was a little bit of a disappointment for this team. I think he really struggled early on in the year. I think by the end he sort of came into his own. I think part of that was because Numlock is a more aggressive shot-going main tank. I do think there's hope there, but let's just assume that we do, move on to somebody else. Who do you guys have penciled in that off tank position, or do you have Nevix staying?
I also kept another Atlanta player here, Fried, because Pakmo and Fried were a nasty duo in season 2. Yeah. And they're benched this entire season, and Fried is still playing Overwatch. If you take that tank duo and put it on Toronto, looking good.
Interesting. It's funny because I wasn't as impressed with them in season 2 as I think you were. I didn't rate Pokebo, and definitely not FRD. I think Pokebo was pretty good, but FRD I always thought was a little bit had his ups and downs. Chris, who do you sort of think is taking that position?
I know this is a little bit of a cop out because we were talking about him earlier. Oh no, it isn't. But I would like to see Note, and I'd like to see Note because once again he's been playing for the Fuel for a while. I think he's been there since season 1.
No, it's Boston Uprising season 1. But he went to the Fuel in season 2. He was traded.
Season 2, yes. So he's still been there for a little while. They may be looking to get rid of him, but he is Canadian, and I know that we're going to be getting rid of. I know we're getting rid of Short for and possibly even Agilities and Mangachu. He's not really a player right now, so he's Canadian, but counts less. So it'd be cool to see, that Canadian representation. Once again, he has that like killer diva instinct where he can like turn on that aggression really hard, and I think that would even kind of work well with OGE.
OG and Note is actually kind of interesting. That'd be really nasty if it was Dive. You had a Monkey Diva with OG and Note. Actually sounds kind of nice. I think FRD would be good. I haven't watched enough of them from like an Atlanta Reign. So it's an interest. I never even thought about him. It's interesting you brought him up just because again I obviously define podcasts. I don't grind their VODs. I think Note's good. He'd be interesting. He was someone who I was lukewarm on going into this year, but I think he impressed a lot of people. And I think if you could get him, he would be another player who I think that would fit this team pretty well. My final one outside of those is, obviously, if you get Lolish, Eliva kind of goes hand in hand. It's such a risky tank line, though. So even as I'm saying it, I'm sort of like, trial them. But if it doesn't work, don't go for it, right? Like that's really, really risky. An interesting one I think is Poco from the Philadelphia Fusion. Assuming that they keep Fury, and I know, like I said, Super, and that one's a bit more a meme. I think Poco's a legitimate option because I think if you're the Philadelphia Fusion, you probably keep, you're keeping Fury. You're obviously paying a bunch of money for him. And, oh my God, who's their main tank? It slipped my mind right now. Sato, exactly. So I think Sato and Fury is probably your main tank of the future. I think it's possible that you could go out there and sort of throw some money and get Poco. And I think he would be a pretty good off tank, and I think he has potential to make some waves.
I like that
Yeah.
one. Just depends if they want to, rotate him in still in the future. It
Yeah.
depends.
If you're the Philadelphia Fusion, you can't be happy with Fear making like 250,000 staying on your bench, right? Like you just can't be happy with that. Overwatch League's not making that much money.
Wasn't he the one that talked smack against us? I think it was in one of the tournaments before. He's like, I think he's like, yeah, I think when we were going to like the top four, he was like, yeah, but they just got one person. They're not that good.
Yeah, whatever. That's a different season. Like you let bygones be bygones. The Agilities might not even be on the team anymore. Like if you can get Poco, I think you can get him. And I think there's a legitimate chance that he lets him go because like I don't know why you'd just sit there and spend however much money Poco's making, and it's probably not cheap for him just to play on the bench behind Fury. Like I think you just build around Fury because Fury is fantastic. But I think all those are some pretty good answers. Let's go to hit scan. So I think we're all in agreement that Logix could probably stay on this team. Good for the fans. I think he has some pretty good highs. Almost single-handedly carried us in that final game of the season. Who are some other hit scan players that you think can fill that role?
I wrote down Shockwave because he actually is going to be a free agent this off season. So I think Shockwave could potentially be better than Logix, but depends on what heroes and what map and the meta and all that happens with Logix and Shockwave.
So it's probably kind of cheap too.
Probably, yeah, that too.
I'm happy you brought up Shockwave because a lot of people might not know that. I mean, esports is pretty typical to get a 1+1, which is you sign 1 year, then the team options the second year, so the team can decide if they want to pick that up. But Shockwave, you're right, was brought in under just a 1 year contract, so he is actually a free agent. Obviously, he used to play for the Defiant in their Montreal Rebellion, their academy team. We did kind of give him his first shot before he was playing with Square One. So I think Shockwave would fit this team really well. He was actually sort of who I had, him and Logix. I think the issue with that is I don't know if his Sombra is great. Like, I don't know who would play Sombra between those two. And that could be a bit of a concern. Another interesting one I think would be Sharp if the Atlanta Reign let him go. I haven't seen too much of Sharp. When I have seen him this year, he's impressed me. I think that'd be another interesting player. And then finally, and this one's, again, a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more of a long shot. But if Dante has gotten sick of the Houston Outlaws and is looking for a way out and for some reason wants to come up north, I think Dante would fit really nicely on this team, especially alongside Logic. So I think they'd complement each other really well.
Yeah. I don't have a heck of a lot to add to this because I was actually thinking Shockwave too.
Yeah.
What I do know is that Ivy coming back from the Fusion would be a hell of a story.
I think we'd like EQO is, I think, a more interesting one, but he's more flex as opposed to hit scan.
But yeah, EQO, maybe he's too. I just know that Philly has way too many good people. So I'm gonna be consistently going back to them and asking for players.
Yeah, fair enough. They do need to share the wealth. Them and the Shock, man. Like, just give us Super Moth. Like, what you don't need them. Like, you literally have Smurf and Choyobin. Stop sitting Smurf. Smurf's too good to be sat. Triggers me. Yeah, okay, let's go to flex DPS players because I think I've watched your video, Logan. I know you're in agreement with me, but who do you think should be our flex DPS alongside, let's say, Agilities, for instance?
Wrote down Nero because he is most likely going to go to a different team, and I would love to see him go to Toronto, but there's also more options for flex DPS, but Nero would probably be the best option right now.
Other than Nero, who do you think they should go for then? Since you think there's more options.
There's so many.
Put on the spot
hard
a little
to
bit.
think. Yeah, I didn't write another one down. I'm trying to think.
No
maybe I don't know. Probably someone from like O2, like Pelican. Pelican's really good.
Interesting.
He's not. I don't know if he's on. Yeah, he's on O2. Pelican's really good. He'd probably be good on Toronto.
How about you, Chris?
I don't know. I don't know. There's way too many options here.
You have Nero as well. Is that why? I think all of us are sort of in the agreement that, like, man, Nero would fit this team perfectly. Like, if you're the Toronto Defiant and you're in the off season, I think it starts and ends with Nero. I think he perfectly fills out Agilities where I think he can play every other flex DPS role outside of maybe Genji and Doomfist, although I think his Doomfist is still pretty good. We know that he can flex over like the Tracer and stuff like that. So he fits that role like a generalist. Like, you could argue that him and Shockwave could almost play every meta between the two of them, single-handedly. That's how sort of talented they are. He fits that like Hanzo role because he's really good in that, and he could take the Pharah, even though Agilities is really good. I think Nero, if you're the Toronto Defiant, you gotta be all in on him. Although I do think you'll have competition with like the Glide. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be all in on him, but he's another kid who used to play for the Toronto Esports Club, right? So you he's used to the brand, and hopefully we get him on because I think that'd be a great addition to this team.
Yeah, so on that, we have our supports. Obviously, Kriv, we're diddly do keeping him. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think we'll keep Kriv. Yeah. I think Kriv is one of our best players all year long, and I expect us to keep him moving forward.
Yeah. Now, what about the other role?
I think it's interesting because I think we actually might need 2 flex supports because I think it became pretty clear that Kareev Baptiste struggled. They talked about they wanted another player to play Moira, where Lobau sort of put out that whole post where they were looking for a Baptiste Moira player. That is why I actually had Lars, I think would be another interesting one from currently the Atlanta Reign. I know we looked at him and we almost actually picked him up before Atlanta did. He was somebody who we trialed, and I think had we not had an 11-person roster, we actually probably would have seen him on the team. He's an interesting one. And then obviously I got to mention Crimzo. Crimzo's Canadian. I think Crimzo's great. If it was ever an on a Zen meta and you could put him and Crimzo, like Kareev and Crimzo on there, like, that would be something fun. You know what I mean? I think that'd be a really good fit as well. How about you, Logan?
Yeah, I was also going to mention Crimzo as well. If Dallas does the whole revamp thing, I think this would also be a perfect team for Crimzo to go to. Also because he is Canadian as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Kareev, Crimzo would be nice.
And let's get the main sport. This is what I actually want your opinion on because main sports, I kind of have no idea. Like, obviously, in my dream scenario, I get Moth. That's great. I know Atlanta, you mentioned Fire. Fire was actually somebody who I sort of had on my list as well, only because I'd heard good things about. Like, I've never really seen him play. And when I did see him play this year, he actually didn't really impress me. I think he played when we beat them in the Summer Showdown. I think he looked pretty poor on the Brigida. So, obviously, that could be lack of practice. That could be team chemistry. There's a lot of reasons, right? Like, he got subbed in there pretty quickly. Who do you think the main support should be? I guess if it's Fire, give me some reasons, sell me on Fire, and if it's anybody else, I would love to hear them because I don't. Main support's kind of a tough role.
Yeah, I think 2 options. One just popped in my head is probably Closer as well. He's still good. He plays the game all the time. He's on the bench at Dallas. He's been good in general. And Fire, in Contenders when he was on Team Envy, he was one of the best top level. Kind of like people would kind of compare him to Moth in Contenders. So he's been very good. Yeah, he was really good in Contenders. I do gotta say though, when he did come in, when it was was it Gibraltar? He was playing Brigida. We never really saw him play Brigida that much. It was all like Lucio, Mercy, the normal main support roles other than Brigida.
Yeah,
he was really good on.
And maybe it's just one of those situations where you're right, like he just wasn't used to the role, and it's very right. Like we saw, Cruz good main support came in there and Baptiste, and it just wasn't the same thing, right? Same with Kareev, fantastic flex support, but his Baptiste play was like. He definitely needs some more practice. So maybe it's one of those situations because I think Fire would be interesting. I just other than that, man, it's such a hard role to fill.
Yeah, it is a very hard role to fill. I think the one I did have the one thing I was kind of thinking of maybe FD God. When I saw him playing, he had some pretty good highs. But other than that, man, I don't know the role well enough. I personally,
someone's not a top 500 main support player, right? I mean, thank God we got one on the show right now for us.
Yeah,
give us some. So if he says Fire is good, who am I to say otherwise?
Definitely got to be a talker when you're main support, and if you're not, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Is that what you are? You're a big talker then, and
very.
Are you roasting people?
No,
roasting the Ryan for pinning into the ME team.
Always.
Yeah, FD God is interesting. I don't know if Paris would let him go.
Probably not. But
probably not. Same with Funny Asher, right? I would love Funny Asher. I just don't think Philly would let him go. Although you never know. Obviously, you can always go all Korean, right? That's still my hope of the shock is they're just well, screw it. We'll just get a Korean main support and just go all Korean. Between Violet, Twilight, Korean main support.
Violet.
Their whole DPS is Korean, and then just go Smurf Troy Oben. You don't need these English-speaking players sit on the bench. Actually, I lied. You know who our DPS lineup's going to be? It's going to be Corey and Sinatra. Let's get it, baby. We're going to crush it next year. Let's just cross our fingers, hope Valorant dies in the next couple of months, and we're golden. Okay, so I think before we leave it, let's just give our 6. Okay, Logan, give me your starting 6. 1 DPS, sorry, 1 hit scan, 1 flex. And then Chris, give me your starting 6, and we'll give our final starting 6.
Okay, mine, I was going to go with the new players I listed. Shockwave for hit scan, Narrow for flex, Pokbo for main, Fried for off tank, flex support Kriv, and main support Fire. And the coaches, that can be decided.
Yeah, that's tough. Coaches is tough. Yeah, for me, it's hard. I'm gonna go with I actually like Chris. Chris kind of sold me, and I don't know if I'm gonna regret this. Maybe Eleva Lolish is the right pick. I actually think OG and Note is like kind of spicy. I kind of like it. I'm gonna say the one for you, Chris. You can have that one. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna say Lolish and let's go with Poco, just for fun. I'm gonna go with I think Shockwave and Nero is a really good. I think we're totally in agreement on that. That's a DPS lineup that I think makes a lot of sense. And I'm gonna say Kareev and Moth. Fuck it. I'm saying it. Moth. Give me Moth. I don't care, man. It's just too much wealth there. Just give us one of them. No, I'm saying Moth. There it is.
Yeah.
Super Poco.
You know me.
Super Poco. Logix. Shockwave. Nero. There we go. Moth and Kareev. There we go.
And you know exactly what I'm gonna say. You know, OGE, Note. You got Nero and Shockwave too. I'm down for that. Kriv, FD God.
Ah.
I love to see that.
Actually, it's not that bad. All right, I think after this conversation, I feel a little bit more optimistic about Toronto in their offseason. Obviously, some of these picks are pretty ambitious. Dude, some of these players are reasonable, and people didn't think we were gonna pick up Surefour, and here we are. I think it's more than reasonable that I think Nero's legitimate. I think you can throw a lot of money at Nero. Shockwave's more than reasonable. FD God Moth, a little bit ambitious, but Fire, like there's no way they're keeping Fire. You could throw money at Atlanta Reign and get Fire.
I just don't know, like, what sort of reputation Toronto has now. We literally took one of the most iconic names in Overwatch and, like, just made him retire.
Okay,
like, Surefour.
First of all, let me just clarify. Surefour has always had a history of being somebody who has been a little bit like had his ups and downs, right? There was rumors he benched himself in the like Gladiators previously. And he's talked multiple times on stream that he sort of like regretted going pro. I don't think this was like Toronto Defiant just like ruined his career, right? Where he was this up and coming superstar and he's getting up there in age. He has a fantastic stream, which it's going to be, less motivating to scrim 12 hours a day when you go out there and stream and make more money doing that.
Yes, Spencer. Yes, I know that. But you know what it takes to like kind of come to that deduction is all that knowledge of the past, all that knowledge that if you just look on the surface, which is what most people do, they say, "Oh, best person, one of the best people in Overwatch went to Toronto." Then he retired, and we've had 2 years of just like revolving door of coaches and players. Like we don't have a good reputation, and I think that we're not going to be able to make these things happen because of that.
I think people are smart enough. Like obviously, if you people look at the surface, that's like your average Reddit comment, right? Like if you're in the Overwatch League scene, you're behind the scenes, you know what goes on. You're not just gonna look at the surface and be like, oh, guess Surefour, like Toronto just really ruined him. I think it's a good point though that if you are a hot free agent, like there was rumors that Defiant, might have been interested in Kevster and Onigod, but they weren't able to get them because they weren't willing to go to that team because of their reputation. I think that's a legitimate point. If you're Nero and you have a couple teams going after you, do you go to the Toronto Defiant or do you go somewhere that's a little bit more safe, like the LA Gladiators, a little bit more of an established system, for instance, or like I was going to say Houston Outlaws, but they're arguably just as bad.
We have to have something else in our value prop for them, and right now it seems like money, which maybe we can do because we were one of the top grossing franchises in the Watch League, which beats me. But
good fans. I love the fans. I think the list that Logan put is pretty realistic. Again, I think Note's more than reasonable. Sorry, who's your main thing again? Popo is reasonable. Yeah, I think you could also go out there and get like a Lullish or OGE would be available too. I think all those are really good shouts. Shockwave's definitely reasonable. Nero's probably the toughest one. I think he's reasonable. It'd just be hard. There'd be a lot of people trying to get him. That would have to be like a money thing. And if you can get a good coaching staff around him, be like, hey, by the way, here's a really good coach to work alongside. Kareev's already there. Logix is already there. And main support, Fire was sat on the bench all year. There's no way he wouldn't come to Toronto if we offered him a starting position. I think all those players are more than reasonable, and I think that at the very least, it's got some upside. Now, when we get like Super and Moth and shit like that, yeah, okay, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, right? Maybe we're sipping the juice. a little too hard. But I think some of those players. I don't disagree though, Chris. I do think their reputation could hurt us. I do agree on that.
And you know what? This is a complete wheel change right now, but I know we're about to wrap up. I think we got that, a little part wrapped up real quick. What I want to do before we go is just mention the Toronto Defiant Goats tournament this coming Sunday. If you guys didn't know, there is a tournament where all of the Toronto Defiant players are forming teams, playing a classic round of Goats on Sunday, and we have had the honor of being able to host one of the lobbies where you can actually do like a cast of some of these games. So we'll be releasing more information on which platform we're doing that on, either YouTube or Twitch. And then hopefully you guys will be able to come in and hear us butcher our casting.
Yeah, we'll let you guys know more about that in the future. I'm really excited to see Goat. I just saw Kariv's team today. It's got like Costa and all of them on it. It's gonna be like OG Valiant. So I think that's gonna be a really fun tournament. I miss Goats more than anything, so I cannot wait to see this tournament. I think it's gonna do really well, both viewership wise as well as entertainment wise. And so thank you guys so much for watching. Logan, LeonMaster, just before you go, this is sort of your moment. Let everybody know who has watched this and enjoyed where they can find you, and we'll put all that stuff in the description below.
Good question. I don't know how to put this. YouTube, look up LeonMaster. The Twitter is LeonMaster, like AH, not the ER.
Yeah.
And then Twitch, it's LeonMaster, ITS, LeonMaster.
All right, cool. I'll put all that stuff in the description below. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I think it's been a great talk. Thank you for sort of giving us some, again, Poco and FRD, those are some names I would have never thought of. So I think you brought a lot to the table here, and hopefully the Defiant can have a good offseason and we can finally come into next year and see some success. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you always liked it, leave us a like. Give us some comments in the description. Let us know what you think about Toronto moving forward. Who would you like to see on the roster, and who would you like to see them picked up? Put that in the comments below. We always love to have those discussions. And as always, enjoy.